Hey, Will King here, and today on the Build Show, we're going to be talking about low voltage, whether that's audio, speakers, networking, etc., all inside of a house, and what you as a builder need to be thinking about when you're selling a house to a client to make sure they get what they need and they want inside their house. All right, so we talk about low voltage in the house. That kind of means a lot of things. It can mean everything from internet, like whether it's hardwired or whether it's Wi-Fi. It can mean coax or cable going to all your TV locations. It can be audio, so like whether we're doing a Sonos audio system or some other audio system, pre-wiring for that, planning for that, and also camera systems too. So security cameras are a big thing that we do on about all of our builds now. So when we talk about low voltage or AV work, audio visual, like that's kind of, it encompasses a lot of things that go into our builds. But today we're pre-wiring this house, and we have a good partnership with a local company here in Florence, Shoals Smart Homes, and they're the ones actually pre-wiring this house and getting ready for all the systems that we're putting into it. But I want to talk to you today about, I guess, if you're a builder and how you can sell this to your client and how you can educate your client. Because to start with, your client may not know what they want or what they need. And I think it's a builder's responsibility to educate that client on what's out there that would make their lifestyle more enjoyable once they're in their house. Now, this is going to be a vacation home or a second home for a family. So there's certain things, especially being that this may be rented out to families in the future, like a short-term rental, to make sure that there's things like camera systems where they can monitor it when they're not here, and also a very easy to use audio system. So we met with a client here at or actually on site and at our office, and talked about these different options. And basically we take a basic set of house plans. Now this is just a basement floor plan and a first floor plan that I have here behind me. And we go through and we talk about what all they might want at each TV location. That's always a good place to start. And so in this house, there's several TVs, and we just talk about audio. All right, so when we talk about that, it's like, well, how do you want to listen to your TV? Is it going to be just the TV speakers, which are kind of lame, but that's still an option? Or do we want to have just a basic sound bar? Or do we want to have in-ceiling speakers with a subwoofer either in the ceiling or sitting in the floor somewhere? And all that going or being controlled from an amp inside of a rack or behind the TV. There's all these different options, right? So we talked to the client, and there were certain TVs that they definitely wanted to upgrade their audio. So that was a good place to start. And another question we asked them is, well, what kind of TV do you watch? Are you talking about, is your plans to get cable TV, satellite TV, or do you just stream like most people do today? And so the answer here is that they stream. That's what they wanted to do for their main TV source is to stream their, I guess, stream their favorite channels or whatever, their movies. So we talked through that, and then we talked about where the speaker locations could go. And of course, those have to line up with cabinetry and lighting and that kind of thing. So we talked through all the options, even outdoor TV, speakers on the back porch. We got a double-decker porch. We have speakers top, speakers bottom, and then a TV location on the bottom deck. We also have a boat dock that we have to take into account. So there's going to be a boat dock down this hillside behind us, and they want to have the ability to have cameras and Wi-Fi down at their dock. So even those things have to be thought about when we're considering all the AV that goes into a house. So to start with, when you talk about wiring a house for low voltage wiring, you have to pick a home point, or the rack location, we call it. And we also have to talk about the demarc location too, which we'll get to in a second. But with the rack location, we always try to put it somewhere out of the way, maybe in a mechanical room ideally, where they can have a floor mounted or wall mounted AV rack, and all the wiring in the house comes to there to start with. That's where it originates before it scatters throughout the house. So in this situation, there is actually a mechanical room here in the basement, and that there's also some other things down here like a water heater, an air handler, and electrical panels. So there's going to be an AV rack in the mechanical room. That's where all the wiring starts. The only thing that comes into that mechanical room for low voltage is going to be that demarc location, which is essentially a piece of conduit that goes outside. So when your cable company or your AT&T fiber company or whoever you have servicing your house, when they show up at the job, they don't have to drill holes, which I hate because then we have an air leak. They can simply push the wire through the conduit that you already have in place for them. That'll make that more successful for you. But that's going to come into our rack location, and then from there, it goes throughout the house. So let's talk about cameras. So this is going to be an outside camera system, and what we're doing here, we have a 16-channel NVR, so it's a network-based hard drive that you can access from your phone, no matter where you are in the world, as long as you have internet connection. So that's going to be based in that AV rack, and then from there, we have camera locations going out to the corners that are indicated by these red marks on the plans. So that's going to cover the outside. There's also going to cover the dock. And that's going to be the cameras. We talk about audio. All right, so the audio system in this house is going to be Sonos audio. That's going to be the main, I guess, component that's going to handle the audio. So if you're not familiar with Sonos audio, it's super easy. There's several different speakers and amps and different systems that they have that are incredibly user-friendly. And in this situation, they're also very user-friendly for guests that may be coming in to do short-term rentals. So let's talk through what they've done. So the TV in the basement, which is where we're standing, it's actually behind me or in front of me. That's going to be a wall-mounted TV, and we're simply going to have a sound bar below it by Sonos, and then also a wireless subwoofer. And so the audio input will be into the sound bar via HDMI cable. So there's really no pre-wiring for that part other than just power sources for the sub and then data to the TV to make sure we can stream appropriately. The other part of the basement, we have in-ceiling speakers. And so with in-ceiling speakers, you have to have an amp that pushes them. And so you can see over here, there's actually brackets already in place that they've installed here for rough in for a 6.5-inch in-ceiling speaker. And the wiring goes back to the rack, and that's where our Sonos amp will be that will control those in-ceiling speakers. Now, outside's the same way. We have speaker wire ran out to wall-mounted speakers out here. So right now it's just the wire hanging out. And after siding is installed, we'll come back and actually mount that speaker to the siding and hook it up. Those wires also go back to the rack location. And then upstairs is a very similar setup. We actually have in-ceiling speakers in the kitchen that go back to the rack, and then also in their master bathroom. I'm actually a big fan of a speaker in my shower, and we talked to the client about that, and they agreed that they would enjoy being able to listen to music inside their shower. So that's a dual channel speaker there in their shower that goes back to the rack location too. So that handles their audio, and what you have to understand about Sonos is that the TV has the input. So somewhere like the TV in the basement to the sound bar, that audio inputs into the Sonos sound bar. From there, in the Sonos app, you can group it with any other Sonos audio in the entire house. So as long as it's on Wi-Fi or internet, whether it's hardwired or whether it's on Wi-Fi, like I said, you can group that audio from the TV down here and play it in sync all over the house. Or you can have different inputs for the different zones in your house. So it makes it very easy to use if you're watching ball games and want to listen to it in the whole house, or if your kids are wanting to use, say, Spotify or Pandora somewhere else in the house, but you're wanting to listen to the ball game. It gives you those controls, which are very, very user-friendly. The other thing that we hadn't talked about is I guess, just data and access points. So we typically always run Ethernet or Cat6 wire to all of our TV locations. It's a good idea to run two. It wire's cheap and it gives you options. It gives you the ability to have a hardwire connection just for data. It also gives you the ability in the future to run audio back to your rack location if you ever needed to via what they call an audio bailin. Or you could even use one of those wires, one of those Cat6 wires for an access point for better Wi-Fi coverage. So there's give you options. It's just better to go ahead and plan and run at least two Cat6 wires to those TV locations. We also talked about access points with our clients. So this house is going to have 3 access points for Wi-Fi. There's one in the basement in the ceiling, there's one on the main level in the ceiling, and there's actually going to be an outdoor access point on the upper deck that will cover the outside space, their fire pit area, and even down to the dock for additional coverage there as well. So, you know, the average client's not going to know all these things, and you really need to be able to offer and educate your client on things like better Wi-Fi systems, better audio systems, and most of them are going to be very interested in learning about that. And the beauty of it is you can also just pre-wire for it. So you don't, all these, with the exception of the brackets down here in this ceiling, upstairs, like in the kitchen island, that is going to be laced in the ceiling above the sheetrock. So then you don't have to install the speakers right now. And all the, but it gives you the ability to later, if you ever need to, or the customer ever wants to add audio, you can actually just cut a hole in the ceiling, find that wire, pull it back out, and mount your speakers. And then as long as you have an amp pushing it, you're good to go. And with that too, I will also say, if you don't know about an iGuide or a Matterport type camera system, if you're not doing that on your builds, I can't recommend that anymore, because if you're ever trying to hook up audio or speakers or networking or anything really down the road, if you don't have a 3D walkthrough of your house before you put insulation in, you're really going to regret it. It's the best $300 or $400 you'll ever spend on your house. All right, so we're standing inside the mechanical room of this house, and I told you that this is where the rack location is going to be. You can see behind me this massive wires that's coming down the wall and I guess stubbed out of the wall down low. Now this is going to be set up for like a floor mounted rack for all these wires to come into. And so in this, we have all of our Cat 6 wire, we have coax RG6 wire, and we also have 16.4 speaker wire. So I think it's worth pointing out that that's a 4-conductor speaker wire. Now, speakers only take 2 wires unless it's a dual channel speaker, but the way Paul does it is that he runs it through to the speaker like a pair of speakers, but he hits both. So when he wires in his speakers, he just takes at the first location 2 of the wires, hooks it to the speaker, and the other 2 carry on to the next speaker location. So it's a little more efficient as far as wiring goes versus using a 2-conductor wire and having to run 2 different wires. So 16.4 covers 1 pair of speakers, which I did not know until I started working with Shoals Smart Homes, and I figured out that that's how they were doing it. But anyway, good little point there. But this is what it's going to look like for rough end. It's a lot of wires, but when you start adding up, 8 speakers or 8 cameras, access points, all the TV drops, and in-ceiling speakers, it ends up being a lot of wiring that all comes into this rack location. All right, so one more thing to point out is that here in the mechanical room, there'll be a plug that the electricians will have to install. Now, it's typically a dedicated circuit, but it'll just be a regular 20 amp 110 plug that'll be powering the rack location. And then from there, all the amps, the NVRs, and everything else inside that rack will be powered, and then that will push all the equipment. It's also a good idea to have a battery backup built into that rack, so in the event of a power failure or a blink, just a quick power surge, you don't lose your internet and everything has to reboot. So guys, if you're not already following me on Instagram, please go do so. It's at Will King Builds. And just remember, iron sharpens iron, so keep grinding, keep watching these videos, and we'll see you right here on The Build Show.